Today it's honor for me to invite Gary Hawkins and his wife. And Gary wrote a book. It's called Life Redesigned. I read the book and
Thank
it's
you.
really resourceful, I have to say, and it has so much information inside for the people who wants to read it. I'm not telling you guys right now what it's about. So now question. What inspires you to write this book?
Well, the inspiration for the book is probably not the answer you're expecting. So it's kind of circumstance.
Okay.
So I've been planning a period of, if you like, long-term travel or retirement for a long period of time. And we've been together for 20 years now. Close to 20 years. 3 or 4 years ago, actually 4 years ago, we adopted our daughter, Joy. And those two, that really sort of led Yafei to coming on board with this idea of spending more time with our daughter and traveling and so forth and so on. And so in the planning process for this, I started to make notes and what we needed to do and so forth and so on. And I ended up with so many notes that it was like, well, why not share this with everybody else in the form of a book? So it was kind of circumstance.
Oh, I see. It's spontaneous, yes. Also along the way, you plan it out, huh?
Right, exactly.
So what is called a life redesigned in your term? Like, what exactly mean to you when you say redesigned?
Well, we both come from corporate environments.
Okay.
I was originally born in the UK, as you can probably tell from the accent. I came across to America in '95.
Okay.
Yafei came across to America in 1992 for the same reasons, for school and work. And you know, we've done the typical American dream, if you like, ever since, or until recently anyway. You know, we've worked hard, we've bought a house, we've started to raise a family, what everybody would call the American dream.
Okay.
I finished my corporate work in 2017, beginning of 2017, after a pretty successful career. I was a CTO for an IT services company, VP of product management for a $1 billion company, and Yafei spent 15 years with Qualcomm. That was her last thing. And so, you know, we were both part of that. And to walk away from that is kind of a life redesigned, right? Because wherever, you know, if you change your life significantly from, if you like, the typical American dream and walk into something else, then that's where the title of the book came from.
So you are redesigned to a next phase. So
yes.
What is your next phase now?
So we've got different goals for this, and I'm sure Yafei will add some things to this, but my goal really around this started about, it started over 30 years ago. Okay. So I was in the UK at that time.
Okay.
I lived with my mum and dad. I had a brother as well. And my dad was a typical working class engineer.
Okay.
You know, we weren't a particularly rich family. It was a very normal existence. But my dad had taught me two really important things. One, never spend money that you don't have.
Good advice for everyone out there. No loan, no debt.
And in fact, the only debt he ever carried was the mortgage on his house. So he never had a credit card. If he didn't have the money in his back pocket, he never spent it.
Okay.
So that was the first lesson. And then the second lesson that my parents taught me was live within your means. Okay? And so we weren't a particularly rich family. But, you know, we went on vacation and we did all the things that normal families do, right? But we didn't travel around the world and stuff like that because we didn't have the money to do it. But the really important thing was my dad worked hard, they saved money, and he retired at the age of 52.
Ooh, that's early.
Right.
That's very early for working class.
Yeah.
Particularly for their background, it's extremely early. And so I kind of looked at that when I was growing up, and I basically said to myself, that's what I want to do.
Retire at age 50.
52, yeah. I wanted to retire at the same age as my dad. I missed it by 2 years, but it was close enough. So that was where my goals came from. But Yafei's goals are somewhat different.
Yeah, my goal is, we've been married almost 20 years. There's always a discussion in terms of how we look at life based on the different backgrounds. He's from UK, I'm from China. Of course, our education background, family background different. Mm-hmm. So in life, the goal also different. Being a Chinese and growing up in China as well, the goal in life always, hey, study and work.
Yeah, never retirement.
Never thought about the retirement. Never even think about not working because it's just not in our DNA, and we're accustomed to study hard, work hard. You either go to school to study or work. So there's no such thing called not working. So I'm not very tuned into the retirement concept for a long period of time because it's just not in me. But however, once we got Joy, making me to think, what do I want in life? And recently, my parents getting older and got some health issues. So, and also I've seen a lot of older generations start passing away and make me think of life is too short. And I really wanted to spend time with Joy. So in 2018, I make my decision. My goal is I wanted to focus on family and spend time with Gary and Joy and travel. So travel, it is my goal, but with the family together. And with that, so the goal is different with Gary, but it seems like we can work out, even though different goal, but we can still work out how we achieve those goals.
So it's
right,
but you see a different way of working. I mean, right now, even so you're considered retired, you're still in a way is working, but doing something you love. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a busy person, right? I don't sit on the couch and watch TV all day. So I'm always busy with something. But I think, you can work and earn lots of money, and we've got friends who are, from a net worth perspective, right, worth far more than we are, but they're still working.
Yeah.
But when I looked at it, I was like, well, there are other things to do.
Yeah.
And we only need a certain net worth to retire with. And so once we got to that point, we figured that, that was the right point to retire.
The retirement in the sense is, we kind of have to thinking about more of okay, before we're working for a corporation, for someone else, yeah? Now I get to do something for myself, my family, and to take joy for traveling. How long? You've been married for 20 years?
Yeah. I did my first trip to China in the back end of 1994. And Yafei had done, we have a small child problem here at the moment. And Yafei had done her first trip working abroad to England at the same time. And I went, and during my first trip to China, I visited Nanjing, which is Yafei's hometown.
Okay.
And Yafei had visited Bath, which is effectively my hometown. I was born about 10 miles outside of Bath. And when we when we were in the US, a friend of ours, a mutual friend, realized that we both visited each other's hometowns.
I see.
I was actually writing my first book at that time about China, and he suggested we meet. And so we met for lunch, and kind of the rest is history. So, yes, we met through a friend.
So, I know that Joy is not your own, yeah? You adopted?
Actually, we married in 2000. At the beginning, we were thinking of living the life for just two of us for a while. And then I became really strong desire to be a mom. So after tried many years on our own, failed, and also tried IVF, failed. And then how that's how we started thinking. Especially Gary gave a very, very strong support. If we cannot have our own, why not we go for adoption? So it takes a while to do some of the research. We've gone through looking at China, looking at Southeast Asia, South America, Europe, East Europe, East Bloc. But turned out that we said, okay, there's a lot of complications for the international adoption. Why not we focus on the US? So we started on the US, and there was so many different ways. If anyone online or out there want to learn how to adopt in US, come to me. Because I learned a lot of experience how to do it, from county adoption to independent adoption. So in the end, we've gone through the independent adoption. But even in independent adoption, there is a lot of roadblocks on the way, and we failed a couple of times during the process. It's a really emotional roller coaster. You have to be really prepared in your internal emotions. Be strong. Anyone out there want to adopt, just make sure that it will happen. No matter what, in the middle of the road, in the end, you will have a beautiful baby and you will enjoy it. So in the end, the agency matched us with a birth mom who is very young in Tennessee. And we had a good relationship. We talked to each other on the phone on the regular basis, almost on a weekly basis, but later on changed into text message. And we went to Tennessee to see them when she was carrying Joy, still pregnancy, 5 months before she was born. And in the end, January 2015, we flew over and we waited until she was born. So literally, she was born in Tennessee University Medical Center, and we were there at the hospital that she was born. So we were so blessed with this beautiful, healthy little girl 5 years ago. So almost she's 5.
Oh,
yeah.
That is an amazing story. It's you hear a lot of stories, people adopting children from different world.
And by the way, Joy also speaking Chinese, because from day one, every day I speak Chinese with her. So she's fluent in Chinese. And last year I took her to China, spent 2 months in Nanjing, my hometown, and put her in kindergarten over there for 2 months. And she was so happy studying with the Chinese kids. She met so many friends. And so she's still speaking Chinese. So if one day everyone wants to meet her, come over and she can speak Chinese with you.
Hey, that's nice. So that means Yafei, and we are talking about some Chinese stereotypes.
Right.
Is that everybody wants you to go to good school, have a good job, and Qualcomm is considered one of the good companies. How that makes you feel to quit and start raising your daughter and go travel around and do a different thing and start this new phase? How do you feel? What are those initial thoughts go through your head when you're deciding whether you want to quit that job?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It wasn't an easy decision at the beginning. So it's a process. It's not like one day I woke up, I make the decision, I quit my job. Being a Chinese, never quit your job, unless in a really, really bad circumstances. So it was a process. It took a couple of years to make the decision. Being a Chinese, as earlier I said, work hard, study hard. So initially when Gary brought it up to travel with Joy for a couple of years, I was reserved. I couldn't, I had many, many worries. Like most of Chinese, we do. We worry about money, worry about our health, what happened if we got sick when we travel, and worry about Joy's education on the road, and also worry about my parents. They live in San Diego, and they're getting old, and I'm looking after them. So a lot of worries, and I couldn't make that decision. So all of these worries and concerns really paralyzed me, not making any decision moving forward. But as we getting older, I see joy in the interactions, and down in the couple of years, I felt as she get older, I want to spend more time with her. And I start to think about Gary's proposal. So it is a good proposal that we travel together. And yes, of course, I have these concerns. But looking at my parents' health, and I'm thinking of when we get older, just like Gary mentioned that we're older parents, when we get older, we couldn't do a lot of things together. So this is the best time to do things as a family. So in 2018, after a couple of years considering Gary's proposal, I made a decision that, okay, now is about the time. Joy was close to 4, 3.5 and 4. And it's about the time I want to think about what's the new life ahead of us. So we talked, and during that time, Qualcomm is going through some redundancy. I said, okay, why not I ask for a severance package that can support us financially, and in the meantime, we plan for our life accordingly. That's how we make the decision.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things there is the last thing Yafei mentioned about the finance.
Yes.
You know, we started thinking about financial planning over a decade ago. We started putting some of the pieces that we needed to put in place for this period. We invest in real estate.
Okay.
And that's not something that happens overnight, right? It's a process.
Yes.
Yeah.
While you have a job, can get a mortgage out of it.
Exactly. Plan this ahead of time. Don't
Yes.
like overnight, waking up in the morning, say I quit, but ahead of time.
Yes, yes.
And we've also been running a really detailed ongoing financial analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So literally at the end of every quarter, I will go through every one of our accounts. It goes into a spreadsheet. We know where we should be. We look at where we are. We look at the difference. If we're on track, we open a bottle of wine. And if we're not, we get plenty of warning that things are, not going in the right direction. So I think one of the things that made Yafei a lot more comfortable, we had 5 years of financial numbers where we could basically look at those numbers and say, we've been on track for the last 5 years. There's absolutely no reason why we can't stay on track because we know what we're doing in terms of our financial planning. So I think that made us a lot more comfortable to say, we can do this and we'll be okay from a financial perspective, which obviously includes medical and it includes insurance and all of those additional things. So, I think the planning piece of it is pretty critical to feeling comfortable. I mean, the last thing...
I have to give credit to Gary. Being an engineer, a planner ahead, he's a master of planning. So I have to give Gary a really good, high credit on that. Without knowing that 5 years data, I do worry, like most of the Chinese, it will be really difficult to make that decision. But with the 5 years data, I'm Chinese, I'm engineer as well, so that gave me much more confident to make the decision moving forward.
So now, since 2018 till now, it's 2 years, almost. We're coming to the end. So in this 2 period of time, how do you feel now after you kind of in this new phase? And what are you feeling compare before?
Very happy, and I'm so proud of myself that I make that big leap in my life to make that decision. And so I left Qualcomm in end of September 2018.
Okay.
So by now just over a year. And I've been taking Joy to different places, China, Mexico, England, all different places. And at the same time, I'm also looking after my parents because my dad just diagnosed with prostate cancer end of last year.
I see.
So within this year, I'm spending a lot of time with my parents, which also I feel very good about it when they need me and I have time and energy to help them. Rather than if I'm still full-time work, I will be struggle with my work, struggle looking after them. So in their early in their kind of life, almost get to the end years, and I can have quality time spending with them, so I won't feel regretted in the future, which also help make me feel very good as well.
So it's a good decision.
I'm very, very happy to make that decision, but I do still have concerns and worries. Who doesn't? I think, even though every day is very good, we still like Chinese way that we still worry about the future. So for me, Gary's decision is for retirement, and my goal is for spending time with the families and helping my parents. But what's in the future? After a couple of years of traveling, what are we going to do? So they're still back in my mind, but for now, I enjoy the present. Really happy with the present, enjoying the present, do as much as we can, and then I will think about when we come back after travel, after a couple of years. Not sure it's going to be 100% retirement, but I will find something that I really wanted to do in life. Like Gary can always find whatever his passion is. I will try to find my passion afterwards.
I see. So it's which is good because you're not stuck to one decision. You allow yourself the freedom to make adjustment. If you need it, you're kind of practical on your financial side, and you also give the flexibility of the anticipating if anything changes. So
yeah.
That actually you point out the very good point. That's during the discussion when we planned for this couple of years travel. This is the one condition I said to Gary, that we have to be flexible. I said to him, what happens if this travel lifestyle after experience it we don't like? Maybe most people say, oh, that's not true, everybody likes it. But what happens if it didn't work, right?
Yes.
So we have to be flexible to find a different way. If it didn't work, we find different things to do. So it can be, don't stuck with one thing. You have to, as we move forward, we have to be flexible and looking at the different opportunities. We might change directions, but at least it will give us a chance to do this.
Yeah. How the people you met in...
Yeah, sure. So, I think a couple of really interesting things have come out of the travel. One of the ways that we do long-term travel is, and sort of going back to the live within your means comment I made earlier on, we use house-sitting accommodation a lot. So we actually travel to different parts of the world and we will house sit for other people. So invariably that's their house and most importantly their pets. And so that in itself actually has turned out to be a pretty rewarding experience. It's fun to be in a community for a longer period of time than you typically would be if you're in a hotel.
That's true, like tourist.
It's tremendous living in a house where you've got a kitchen and washing stuff and everything that's, like a regular house. And actually looking after other people's pets can be great. I mean, we've stayed on farms, we've stayed in some beautiful houses, we've looked after dogs, cats, rabbits, horses. It's, it really is an experience, not only for us, but also for Joy. I mean, she loves animals.
Yeah, I bet.
So the house sitting side has been tremendously rewarding. We've also had the chance to spend a lot more time with my family in the UK, which is nice. My dad is getting older and he's not so well either. So from that perspective, it's been successful. There are challenges. I think if, family dynamics, you're together 24/7 for a long period of time. There are some challenges there.
Yes.
particularly, and we're kind of working through those. We've had a few challenges around homeschooling Joy.
I see.
It's not an easy process when you're parents and you're trying to school your own child. But that seems to be getting a little bit better now. She seems to be more receptive to, accepting us as teachers as well as parents. And we've met some great people. I mean, just to give you an example, we were in a local pub in South Wales.
Okay.
Having a beer, talking to the locals. We bumped into a guy, started chatting. He was a sound engineer, asked a few questions. He was a sound engineer in a music recording studio. Asked a few more questions, and we found out that he actually works for one of the largest recording studios in the world. It's a place called Rockfield Studios. Practically every major band is recorded there. It's on a pig farm in Monmouth. It's the weirdest thing. We went there, we were invited to go and take a private tour, and Yafei actually sat at the very piano where Freddie Mercury composed Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh,
yes.
So because you have this opportunity to integrate more with the community rather than just going and seeing sites and stuff like that, you get to know the people. We met a lot of locals, and they've got really interesting stories, and I think for us it's more about the experience.
Yes.
Of being in different communities as opposed to, just ticking something off of a bucket list, right? We've seen the Eiffel Tower or we've seen, whatever. So it's more experiential for us. And I think as we go forward and we're looking at plans for the future, we're looking at things like staying on a farm doing farming for a couple of months.
Cowboy for a couple of months.
I would actually, believe it or not, there are actually lighthouses that you can look after around the world. That's one of my plans. I want to go look after a lighthouse for a couple of months.
Who wants to join them for the lighthouse?
Right. So there's some unique experiences out there, and I think we've had a lot of fun, and we just need to, like you say, you need to adapt to the challenges as you identify a challenge. You just need to adapt and work around it.
Playground and local shops. You meet the local people. You talk to them. They give you more different tips where you should go good for the kids, and it's wonderful. Yeah, she also experienced a lot of different places as well.
Yeah, so for the what kind of advices you would like to give to people who wants to?
Well, I mean that's a big question, right? So the easiest way to answer the question is probably read the book. But in sort of, I think some of the key things are one, you've got to be in a financial situation to be able to do this, right?
Okay. Yes.
And so either you've either got to be independently wealthy.
Okay.
You've either got to have income coming in from other sources.
Okay.
Or you need to be working while you're on the road to support your travel.
Yes.
Any one of those models works.
Okay, so not jumping cold foot?
No, I wouldn't. That one I wouldn't recommend. And so that's the first thing, right? So, and I'll give you 3 different examples of different travel models that work. So we know a couple of couples that have done the first model, which is basically to allocate a pot of money and decide to travel for a certain period of time until that money runs out. They know they can afford to spend the money. They're generally younger couples, so they're confident they can come back into the workforce. Okay.
Yes.
Our friends Mike and Holly did it. They spent 4 years on a sailboat. They basically went down through Mexico, Central America, across the Caribbean, ended up in Florida. They spent 4 years on a sailboat doing that. They allocated a pot of money. When they got to the end of that pot of money, they stopped traveling, they sold their boat, and they're now both working again. And we've also got friends, Elliot and Tanya. They have a website called Midlife Recess, and they're currently in Italy doing a year to probably 2 years in Italy, depending on their sort of financial situation. So that's kind of model one. The second model is, I know a couple, in fact, we know a couple of people, but Mike and Nicole is probably the best example. So Mike and Nicole were in LA about 3 years ago, and unfortunately they ended up getting evicted from their apartment because their landlord wanted to repurpose their apartment building. So they had nowhere to live. They took a house sit for 3 years, for 3 months. They enjoyed it. But the most important thing was they found that they could not only take the house sit, but they could both do their jobs while they were still traveling without any problem at all. Nicole runs a marketing agency, and Mike is a motion graphics designer.
Oh.
Yeah.
And actually, they realized that not only they were doing that, because now they weren't paying for rented accommodation, they were actually saving money for the first time. So they have actually now adopted this lifestyle as a full-time lifestyle. They go from house sit to house sit to house sit. They work 40 to 60 hours a week. I mean, they're hardworking individuals, so they're doing regular jobs, full-time jobs. But they go from country to country, house sit to house sit, and they've been doing this for about 2.5 years now. They're booked up all the way through next year. My guess is they're probably going to keep doing this for another couple of years, yeah. And for them, it's actually been a financial positive. So,
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty incredible to be able to travel, see all these different places they're seeing, and at the same time, they're actually saving money.
Yeah.
Who does this full time, called Angie. She actually works for one of the companies that facilitates house sitting, and she literally again goes from house sit to house sit to house sit. She's a travel ambassador, so she is constantly on the road talking to different people who are doing this type of lifestyle. So she works for that company. And then there's kind of our example, right, where we're not independently wealthy. What we've done is we've set up the financial mechanisms to help pay for this. We're using some of our savings as well, but we know from a financial perspective that even though we're spending some of our savings, our assets are going to outlive our need for them. So from that perspective, we feel comfortable. And we know other people in that situation as well. Yafei's friend, Yvonne, is basically doing the same thing. She's invested in real estate. She's now retired. She's just a year older than I am. And she's basically doing exactly the same thing, living off assets that she's put in place. So there are a couple of different models. Living in and hoping for the best model because, again, it really, you don't want to start traveling and then be, in a position of financial stress, right? So, it all kind of comes back to the numbers at the end of the day. You've got to be in a position to be able to do this.
And I have to chime in on this because we see the trend that some of the millennials, the young people, Generation X, they are starting doing this as well because, just blogging or become influencer into something or really, really good at something, but they don't have to be in the office 9 to 5 and travel different places and working on the computer because they're great on the computer things. And with all the internet connection, they literally can make a living and enjoy traveling everywhere they want. So we see that this trend. If you go to Instagram, there's so many people doing this. Yes.
It's even personally for me too.
Right.
It's like I want to have able to go somewhere, use internet, as a way of a communication.
Right.
And to free up because in younger years, when I traveled to different places, at that time there's no internet.
Right.
There's nothing like that. We have to write the letters.
Right. And sending pictures. Turning out to send pictures.
And that is, not wishing to get technical, but, that is kind of, the enablers to this process, right? Part of it is the sharing economy, which is making new types of accommodation available to people. House sitting is a good example. Sort of short to medium term accommodation like Airbnb is another example, right? That's through the sharing economy.
Yes.
And then there's the gig economy, which is essentially remote work. And the fact that companies are moving from a traditional employer-employee relationship to often a remote employer-employee relationship. And then finally, there's the internet itself and the ability to actually connect to it. And really, you know, we're getting to that point now with 4G and the technology changes there, where you can basically go most places in the world now and have a decent internet connection.
Right.
And that enables the first two things to happen, right? For you to be able to use the sharing economy and to be able to take advantage of the gig economy.
Yeah.
So it's those things that really enable this to take place from a technology perspective.
So, you know, if anyone wants to know much of that digital age traveling, really need to check out Gary's book. And in his book, he outlined, he has a lot of resources in there for different type of economy, as he called it, gig economy
Right.
and shared economy, and the resources, the internet, you know, the how to make money off when you're traveling. And it's what I see is very inspirational to me is that, you know, you kind of like, you doing the things, you're plan ahead, you're not like freestyle. But for younger people, they can be freestyle because they're young, they can afford fall off and get it back, you know,
Right.
like at what different age stages, you know, people can choose different type of arrangements. So,
Right.
yeah. And with the the technology development, it allows us to be more free and also redefining what is work retirement, what is the employee-employer relationship, and what is the workplace relationship
Right.
now, you
Yeah.
know. So this is like right on.
Yeah, and the book is available on Amazon.
Yeah,
Just search
yeah.
A Life Redesigned by Gary Hawkins. Yeah.
Yes. So thanks for everyone, and our conversation piece here is ended. If anyone have questions, they can ask.